Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to flex those language learning muscles?
Yep.
We're doing a deep dive today into improving your English speaking skills, all based on that English Express podcast episode you sent over. And wow, Lisa and Mike had some awesome tips in there.
They did. They really did. One of the things that really struck me was how much they emphasized the importance of, well, just speaking, like
Yeah.
actually practicing out loud.
Right. They kept saying practice, practice, practice. It's so true though, isn't it? Like anything you want to get good at.
It really is. It's like you wouldn't expect to just pick up a guitar and play like a pro without practicing, right? Or run a marathon without ever going for a run.
Exactly. Speaking is a skill, and just like any other skill, it takes, well, training. And that's where the practice comes in. I did love how Lisa and Mike were all about not being afraid to make mistakes, though.
Oh, absolutely. That fear of making mistakes, that can be such a huge roadblock for people.
Oh, tell me about it. When I was first learning, actually, you know what? I'll save that story for later, but let's just say I get it.
We've all been there. But honestly, those mistakes, they're actually a really important part of the learning process.
It's like each time you stumble over a word or your grammar goes a little haywire, your brain's actually learning from that.
It really is. It's like your brain's taking notes. Okay, it's saying, note to self that didn't quite work. Let's adjust and try again next time. There's actually a fascinating neurological reason for that, too. But maybe we can geek out about brain science another time.
Definitely save that for a future deep dive because I'm super curious now.
Yeah.
But okay, so we know practice is key. But what are some fun ways to actually practice speaking aside from, talking to a wall? Because Lisa and Mike had some really cool ideas about that too.
Oh, yeah. They had some really creative tips, things like shadowing and using movies and music to your advantage, which are not only fun, they're super effective.
Okay, so let's break those down a bit. First up, shadowing. What exactly is that and how can we use it to sound more like a natural English speaker?
So imagine you're learning, I don't know, how to dance the tango or something.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just sit there and read the steps in a book, would you? You'd watch someone do it.
Yeah, you'd want to see it in action. Get a feel for the rhythm, the movement.
Exactly. And that's kind of what shadowing is like. You listen to a native speaker, maybe on a podcast like this one, or a TV show, anything really, and you try to speak along with them, mimic their pronunciation, the way they emphasize certain
So
words.
you're like their shadow, basically moving with them, but with your voice.
I like that. Okay, that makes sense. And, speaking of sounding more natural, Lisa and Mike also had some interesting thoughts about expanding our vocabulary.
Right. And you know what? It doesn't have to be all about memorizing a million big words. In fact, they actually cautioned against that a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say they made a good point that sometimes simple is better.
Totally. Fluency isn't really about how many obscure words you know. It's more about choosing the right words for the situation and using them well.
Right, you don't need to sound like a walking thesaurus. Exactly, and that's where learning phrases and idioms can be so helpful. It's like you wouldn't just learn individual
Mm.
notes if you wanted to play the piano, right?
You'd learn chords
Yeah.
and how to put them together.
Exactly. And idioms, they're like the chords of language. They just make your English sound more natural and fluid, more like how a native speaker would actually talk. Speaking of idioms, remember that funny example Lisa gave? Something about raining?
Oh, raining cats and dogs. Yeah, I was going to bring that one up. It's such a weird saying when you actually think about it.
Right. Like, what does that even mean? But that's the thing with idioms. You kind of have to learn them in context. But okay, moving on, let's talk about actually putting all this into practice. Finding our voice by talking to other humans.
Because, yeah, at some point, you've got to get out there and have some real-life conversations. And Mike was really big on the importance of finding a speaking partner.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference. Think about it. Remember when you were trying to learn, manage a skill you've struggled with, and having a friend to practice with made it so much easier and more fun.
Oh, totally. We used to describe a fun or memorable experience you shared with a friend while learning that skill. It's amazing how much more motivated you feel when you've got someone to cheer you on.
Right. And it's the same with language learning. Having that speaking partner, it gives you that extra push to practice, someone to hold you accountable, someone to laugh with when you make those inevitable mistakes. And luckily, Lisa mentioned all those language exchange apps and websites.
Yeah, there are so many great resources out there now. You can find someone who speaks your target language and wants to learn your native language in return. It's a win-win. But even if you don't have a speaking partner lined up right this second, Lisa and Mike had another really good suggestion, which was to, and I have to admit, this one always makes me a little nervous, record yourself. I know. It's kind of like listening to your own voicemail.
It can be a little cringy at first, for sure.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's actually super helpful. Think about it. If you were a musician or an athlete, you'd want to watch recordings of yourself to see what you could improve.
Yep, you got to see where you're going wrong to fix it.
Exactly. And recording yourself speaking English, it's the same idea. It gives you that objective perspective on your pronunciation, your intonation, all those little things you might not even notice otherwise.
Plus, it's kind of like a judgment-free zone, you know?
Yeah.
You can experiment with different phrases, different accents even, and nobody's listening but you. Well, except for future you, who's going to be so grateful for putting in the effort.
Exactly. And it ties back to what we were talking about earlier about making mistakes.
Yeah.
This way, you can really listen for any mistakes you're making consistently and work on those.
Right, like maybe you keep using the wrong tense or you keep mispronouncing a certain word, and by recording yourself, you can actually hear it and do something about it.
Exactly. It's like having a personalized language coach, but without having to, pay for a language coach.
Okay, I'm convinced. Time to get over my fear of recording myself. So we've covered a ton of ground today, the importance of practice, not being afraid of mistakes, those cool techniques like shadowing and learning idioms, finding a speaking partner, and recording yourself. Phew, I need a nap.
I know, right? It's been a deep dive for sure. But the good news is you don't have to do all of these things at once, right? Just pick one or two that resonate with you and start there.
Yes, small steps. Don't try to do too much at once.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with this one thought. Think about why this matters to you. Why do you want to improve your English speaking skills? What doors will it open for you?
Ooh, I like that. Having that bigger vision in mind can be so motivating.
For sure. Will it help you connect with people from different cultures? Travel the world with more confidence? Get that dream job. Let those goals fuel your practice.
Beautifully said. So to everyone listening out there, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to get out there and keep practicing your English speaking skills. Remember, every little bit of effort counts.